So in the previous videos, we created this button click counter app that increased the number each time the button was clicked and displayed the results in a text view. Now there's a reason I got you to put a plain text widget in this layout though, and I'm referring to this one. We go into our layout, this plain text widget that we can see in the top left hand corner of the screen. So there's a reason that I got you to put that there, other than just to make the challenge more challenging. What we'll do is we're going to change the app so that instead of just adding the same text with a different number, it's going to allow you to type text into the edit text field, then add it to the list of items in the text view. Now you've seen that we can put text into a text view using the set text method, and that's this one here. So we use the set text method there to initially set it to 0. Then we also use the .append to append the data to that text view as well. So you've seen how to do that. And as an edit view is just an extended text view, it actually has the same method. So you can probably guess that we can retrieve the text from an edit text widget by using a method called, given that we've got set text here, can you guess what that would be? Get text, that's right. So set text would set the value, get text would retrieve the value. So let's make a few changes to the code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by deleting the num times clicked field and the code that displays it. So I'm going to come up here firstly and delete that. We no longer need that. We then get some errors here in the onClick method. So I'm going to delete that as well. So I'm just going to delete all of this initially, leaving an empty onClick method, being sure not to delete anything extra. No extra curly braces, making sure they're still there. And we're going to start instead and type string result is equal to user input. I'm using the edit text now, dot get text. Text. Then I'm going to put result equals result plus, then a /n we did before to go jump to a new line. And I'm going to put the code back for text view dot append result. So now that I've done that, there's still an error though sitting there on line 30, but I want the string result because I just don't want to use the number of times clicked anymore. So I changed that to put user input.getText, but it's still showing an error and the entire line is actually underlined in red. So obviously something's not right there, and Android Studio is telling us that. So when you get red underlining like this, like you can see on line 30, you can hover over the underlined text as well as the red bar over here to the right. You can either come over here and do it, or you can come over here, and that actually tells you what the problem is. Now, when I did that now on both of them, you can see we do actually get the same error. We get incompatible types required, java.lang.string, found, android.text.editable. So what does this actually mean? Well, what it's saying is that we need a string value because we've declared result on line 30 to be a string, so we can only put a string into that variable, but we're not getting a string back. We're actually getting an android.text.editable. So although getText may have been an obvious choice to do the opposite of setText, because with setText up here, clearly we passed a string into it, but the same doesn't apply for getText. Instead of returning a string, it actually returns this android.text.editable. But fortunately, the fix is actually quite easy. Editable objects have a toString method that will return a string. So what we need to do is just come to the end of it and type in .toString. And if I do that, the error then disappears, and we haven't got those errors showing anymore, noting that the error over here, the red line's also disappeared. Now, in case you haven't seen method calls being chained together like this, what's happening is the getText method is returning an editable, and then we call the toString method of that editable. So we're doing that sort of automatically, and the final result from the toString is then put into the result variable. So we can rewrite this just to make it a bit more clearer if that's a little bit confusing to you. We could do something like this. We could type editable e equals user input.getText. Then we could change this line here to result to be e.toString. So that's actually the equivalent commands, but on 2 lines instead of 1. So the net result is we've still got the toString method being called on our editable type, and the result has been saved into our result variable. So if you prefer, you can do that, but it's actually very common in Java to chain method calls like I had. So I'm actually going to undo those changes and leave it like I originally had. And you'll see lots of code in Android Studio, and other Java code will be like this as well. So you should now be able to see what that's doing. It's the same as before, but the intermediate editable isn't used anymore. The toString method is being called directly on the return value from the getText method. Now, sometimes Android Studio doesn't delete imports straight away when they're no longer used. Now, up in the import section, if it's still importing android.text.editable up here, you may want to actually remove that line manually. But if you did follow the instructions that I set up when we installed and configured Android Studio, that should have disappeared for you automatically. And as you use them, so as I come in here and type editable e equals user input.getText, you did notice when I was doing that this editable line got added automatically. Then if I delete that line again, Android Studio should think about it for a minute, and then it should actually update it for us. And if it doesn't update it, you need to go into your preferences or settings, depending on whether you're running on Windows, Linux or Mac. And we can do a search for import. You click on here to auto import, and you can click on these codes here, making sure that they're all selected. And this optimize imports on the fly, add unambiguous imports on the fly. The optimize imports on the fly should be the one that actually fixes things automatically. So we should find that actually does delete itself. But of course, it's making a liar of me now. But normally it actually does do that. So if we actually use something, so we come in and we can put editable e equals user input dot get text, and then we delete it. What it's meant to do, you can see that it's actually highlighted that to say it's no longer being used. I'm not too sure why it's not actually deleting that for us automatically, but in any event, I'm going to put it back, and I'm going to come down here and delete that first line. I'm just going to delete it. So I suspect that's actually a bug in the preview version of Android Studio 2.2. By adding that optimize on the fly to our imports, what should be happening is the import should be added and deleted automatically as they're used. But in any event, you can see that if you do run into difficulty, you can just remove them manually. Okay, so the bottom result is that we've now got whatever was typed into our edit text into a variable, and we've retrieved that, and then we've added it to our text view. So all the red errors have actually disappeared at this point, but we have actually got some warnings. So we've got over here, if we can come over to here, you can see we've got a warning found, and over here we can see a yellow line. Fields can be converted to a local variable. So this is actually a warning. So it's actually telling us, because it's in yellow and not red, that there's a problem here. So I'm just going to move over here and click on more to get more information about what that error is. So this is actually telling us that the field button could be converted into a local variable. What that means is that button is only used in the onCreate method, so we could move its declaration into this method. And it was actually saying that for the other fields earlier, but now that user input and text view are being used in the onClick method, they can't now be made local to onCreate. So it's only showing us that mentioning it for one variable now. So it is a good idea generally to pay attention to these warnings and suggestions and to act on them unless you've got a really good reason not to. Now I'm going to take notice of this suggestion, so I'm going to delete the declaration of button in line 13, on line 14 rather, so I'm going to delete that. And come over here, but then what I can also do is move over here to the left of it. It can be a bit fiddly sometimes to get this right. And I don't want to do that, so I'll just wait till that disappears and hold down Alt-Enter. I'm going to press Escape, and I'm going to press on my Mac again, Alt-Return again, and I get this little field up here. So you may have to be a bit fiddly to get that to work, but we can actually create local variable button. So I'll click on that, and you can see what's happened is it's just added the declaration for us automatically. So it's just a simple way of actually getting that extra line of code, the other variable declaration added for us automatically. So can be a bit fiddly. I could have just obviously just typed this bit of code here to declare it as a local variable. I could have just went ahead and typed it like that. But it can be a good thing to get into the habit of actually using these shortcuts wherever you can, just to save yourself a bit of time. Now there is another warning that may or may not appear for you, and I just want to bring up a slide to show you that other message that may appear for you. So you may actually get something like this, and if you do, when you hold down Control and press F1 to expand that message or click on More, you'll get the extended bit of information here. So it may come up and actually say something about method invocation set on click listener may produce java.lang.null pointer exception. But strangely, while I was in the process of setting up this lecture, in fact just after I'd set up this part of the course, those warnings stopped appearing. So you may wonder why we don't check for null before accessing methods of text view and button. So just in case those warnings come back, and because it's useful to understand what can go wrong with find view by ID, I'm going to explain why it's a bad idea to check for null in this case. Now, the code I'm talking about is this code down here with the button.set on click listener. So one way to protect this code so that if it was null, we could check against that by putting if button is not equal to null, and then put in the code to set our on-click listener in there like so, and that would protect us against null. But believe it or not, it's not a good idea to do that here. Often it is, so do give serious thought to the suggestions that the code checker may offer you, but also remember that it's just a program and doesn't know everything, and you can ignore those errors, or in this case warnings I should say, once you understand why. Now the reason I don't want you to check for null here is that I'd actually prefer the program to crash if for some bizarre reason button was null. So if button was null here, then the find view by ID, this one on line 22, has somehow failed to find the button in the layout. Now that's very unlikely because if I type this ID incorrectly, for example if I deleted the O in button, then it does pop up with an error for us automatically, and at that point with an incorrect ID the code won't compile and we've actually got an error. So it is very unlikely that it's going to happen. I put the O back and we've now got a valid ID. But where there is a potential problem, and that could be if there's a button perhaps spelt wrong, B-U-T-T-N, in another layout. And if that's the case, I'd rather the code crash in testing rather than going sort of live without the click listener being attached to the button. Now this is obviously a very simple app, but in an app with loads of buttons, it's possible that one may be missed in testing and never clicked, so you wouldn't know it didn't do anything. Now of course that shouldn't happen. Thorough testing should pick that up, but if it is likely to be a problem, I'd rather attempt to call a method on a null variable and have the program crash as soon as it does that. So in fact, let's test this out. So I'm going to stop this video here now, but in the next video what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can simulate this error just to confirm what this problem is and why it's not a good idea to do this test here. So let's work on that in the next video.